Hello and welcome to NewsRound, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I'm Tenyola Shoboale. The headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari unveils digital performance management system to track government projects at the midterm ministerial performance retreat in Abuja. Electoral umpire INEC sole power. A Senate gives electoral umpire INEC sole power to determine procedure for electronic transmission of election results. Chief of Defense Staff confirms death of Abu Musab al-Babawi, the leader of the Islamic State in West Africa province. Plus, British MP Sir David Ames dies after being stabbed to death in an Essex church. That's NewsRound in View. We begin NewsRound at the presidential villa, where there was a stock taken by the federal government at the third edition of the midterm performance ministerial retreat. On President Muhammadu Buhari's list of achievements are the purchase of a 29 Super Tucano fighter jet to battle insecurity, as well as efforts at executing some critical projects to improve power supply. Present at the event were all ministers and top-level officers of the government who sat for about 6 hours to review the activities of the government in the last 2 years.
It is the third edition of the Midterm Ministerial Performance Review Retreat since the president's second tenure in office. 1 year since the last presidential retreat, ministers, permanent secretaries, and top government officials are back in this crucial stock-taking exercise at the State House.
At this two-day retreat, it is not unusual for the president to highlight some notable accomplishments, set new targets, and address disconnects. In dealing with the sore area of insecurity, he instructs the military to revive local manufacturing of weapons.
We have increased investment in arms, weapons, and other necessary equipment, expanded the National Command and Control Center to 19 states of the Federation, and established a Nigerian Police Trust Fund, which will significantly improve funding for the Nigerian Police Force. To address our over-dependence on other countries for military equipment and logistics, I have instructed the Defense Ministry to create a modest military-industrial complex for the local production of weapons to meet some of the requirements of the country's armed forces. This is being implemented under the Defense Industries Corporation of Nigeria, a military department responsible for arms manufacture.
In fresh moves to advance transparency in the system, the president publicly unveils a tracking system that would, among other things, track projects under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund.
In our continuing drive to ensure accountability, we have incorporated a performance management framework into the functions of the Central Delivery Coordination Unit for ease of tracking of the ministerial deliverables along the lines of the 9 priority areas of this administration. This initiative has provided me the opportunity to track the performance of all ministries and, by extension, this administration. This process has been in effect since January 2021, and today it gives me great pleasure to unveil the performance management system and dashboard to track projects in real time with live data and early warning system to proactively resolve bottlenecks.
In the last 6 years, 878 contracts have been approved by the present administration to escalate economic growth and infrastructure gains.
The PMS will be set up in the President's office, along with that of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, as well as in the office of the Permanent Secretary, Cabinet Affairs Office, and the Delivery Unit. I encourage ministries to set up their mini delivery units with dashboards, especially in the ministers' and permanent secretaries' offices, to enable electronic data collection and real-time information on the status of delivery against their respective mandates.
The president promised to stay put throughout all the sessions at this event to listen to the cumulative assessments and draw his own conclusions.
On his part, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has ruled out what he believes are issues that must be dealt with if the country is to enjoy stable exchange rate and improved economy. He tells the gathering that there is need for stronger collaboration among ministries, agencies, and departments of government.
I think that one of the most important things is that there must be synergy between the fiscal and the monetary authority. That is absolutely crucial. We must be able to deal with the synergy. We must handle that synergy between the monetary authority, the CBN, and the fiscal side. Sometimes it appears that there is competition between this, especially on the fiscal side. If you look at some of the interventions, you'll find that those interventions, there are interventions that should be managed by ministries. So the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment should handle MSME interventions and those kinds of interventions. And we should know what the CBN is doing. In other words, if the CBN is going to intervene in the MSME sector, it should be with the full cooperation and consent of the Ministry of Industries. If they're going to intervene in agriculture, it should be with full consent. So that synergy is absolutely important. The reason why it's important, aside from the fact that you cannot plan an economy in any other way, the more important thing is that sometimes you will get people who are benefiting more than once because we simply have no line of sight to what's going on one side. CBN doesn't know what we're doing. They don't know what we don't know what they're doing. So I think that is important. That synergy is absolutely important. And as for the exchange rate, I think we need to move our rates to a more reflective market, as reflective of market as possible. This, in my own respectful view, is the only way to improve supply. We can't get new dollars into the system where the exchange rate is artificially low. And everyone knows by how much our reserves can grow. So I'm convinced that the demand management strategy currently being adopted by the CBN, we need to rethink.
And now to the National Assembly, where the senators bowed to pressure and made a U-turn in its decision on the electronic transmission of election results, empowering the Independent National Electoral Commission to determine the procedure. They had earlier allowed INEC to consider e-transmission of results only if the national network coverage was certified adequate and secure by the National Communications Commission and approved by the National Assembly.
The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is one of the most polarizing pieces of legislation in the Ninth Assembly. Clause 52, which refers to electronic transmission of results, split lawmakers in the Senate sharply along party lines to the extent that a division was called on the vote for the first time in the Ninth Assembly.
Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
After the public vote on Clause 52, the Senate approved that INEC may consider electronic transmission of results, provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communications Commission, NCC, and approved by the National Assembly. This amendment caused uncertainty in the public space as to the intention of Parliament in promoting credible elections and the fate of electronic transmission of results in future elections. Fast forward to Tuesday's plenary session. The Senate is reversing its decision and is giving electoral umpire INEC the free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Voting at an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission.
Those in favor of Clause 52 as amended, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 43, 63 and 87. Clause 87 refers to the procedure for party primaries, which the previous amendment prescribes direct and indirect primaries. The latest amendment is prescribing direct primaries for political parties.
I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary elections. If this our democracy will be strengthened, if this our democracy will grow, and if we are going to be able to take it to anything close to global best practice standards, it is time for us to adopt direct mode of primaries.
Those in favor of the amendment to Clause 87, 4, say aye. Those against, say nay. The nays have it.
Briefing journalists after plenary, the Senate spokesperson throws more light on the re-amendment of the Electoral Act bill.
This will allow INEC, when they have the necessary wherewithal and competence, they don't need to come back for us to introduce electronic voting machine as part of the materials they will use for election.
The Senate's latest amendment of Section 52 to empower INEC to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections is sure to delight many Nigerians and those in the civic space who have been agitating for a reversal of the earlier decision. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And away from the National Assembly, the founder of Citadel Global Community Church, formerly Latter Rain Assembly, Pastor Tunde Bakare, is calling for the adoption of electronic voting in the country. He stated this in a chat with State House correspondents after a closed-door meeting with the president.
The president concluded his week with a visit from his former running mate under the Congress for Progressive's change in 2011. It's not the first time Pastor Tunde Bakare is visiting the State House, but today he says he came to pour out his heart. In recent times, he's been advocating for restructuring.
The much-applauded U-turn on electronic transmission of results by the Senate gained currency in a chat with State House correspondents after his meeting with the president. He primarily wants electronic voting to be adopted.
If we can do not just transmitting results, but to be able to vote electronically, that would be wonderful. It would deepen and enhance our democracy. Not only that, the diaspora send about 25-point-something billion to Nigeria. Nigerian diaspora should also be able to vote like
He criticized the debate over power rotation, describing it as politically immature, reiterating that restructuring can be done without violence.
We need to do it to move this nation forward. The founding fathers of this nation, Sir Ahmadu Bello, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, alongside with their entourage in Lancaster House and everywhere, agreed on what type of government Nigeria should have. We must not change the goalposts in the midst of the game. We are better off together as a nation than going at different ways. But it must be based on equity, justice, fair play, and the rule of law.
While asserting that it is more about what the candidate has to offer, regardless of the region. The former running mate of the president in 2011 does not appear in a hurry to disclose his plans regarding recontesting in 2023. Instead, he asked that the best of Nigerians present themselves for future elections. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
When NewsRound returns in just a moment, Chief of Defense Staff confirms death of the leader of the Islamic State in West Africa province. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. He's dead and remains dead. Those were the words of the Chief of Defence Staff, General Lucky Rabo, confirming that ISWAP West Africa leader Abu Musab al-Banawi is dead. The CDS made the statement during the weekly ministerial briefing at the State House, Abuja, where he also denied that military engagement in the southeast is stiffer and discriminatory compared to the northwest.
The Chief of Defence Staff, General Lucky Rabo, is the latest guest at the ministerial media briefing at the State House, illuminating the successes recorded in recent times owing to additional hardware procurements. General Irabo debunks claims that the military operations in the southeast is discriminatory.
The distinct characteristics of these insecurity issues, they are there. So what you find in the southeast is not the same thing as what you find in the northwest, or even the northeast, or even the north central. And you know that I have been a part of those who have been engaging with key leaders in the southeast. We have had those engagements.
By the same token, he confirms the death of the head of the Islamic State West Africa province, Abu Musab al-Banawi.
I can authoritatively confirm to you that al-Banawi is dead. As simple as that.
Revealing that the military took delivery of the final batch of 6 A-29 Super Tucano aircraft on the 28th of September to complete the 12 procured. The military chief appeals to Nigerians not to resort to violence or crime in conveying their grievances about the government, warning that no one should test the resolve of the armed forces.
Anyone thinks that they can try the shape and form of the armed forces, then of course let him engage in any form of criminality.
He maintains that the procurement of military hardware should be sustained for the nation to have peace, and described the communication blackout in parts of the northwest as a blessing to the fight against insurgency.
And now to the judiciary. The key suspects in the murder of the Chief Executive Officer of Super TV, Usifo Ataga, Chidinma Ujoku and Adedapo Quadri, have been arraigned before Lagos High Court sitting at the Tafawa Balewa Square. They are alleged to have committed the crime in a service apartment in the Lekki area of Lagos State, but they have pleaded not guilty to the charge.
Following the advice of the Lagos State Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, the police withdrew from the prosecution of Chidinma and others indicted in the murder of the late Usifo Ataga. The DPP, Mrs. Olayinka Adeyemi, swiftly filed a 9-count charge against Chidinma, her suspected key accomplice Adedapo Quadri, and her sister Chioma Egbuchu, from whom the late Ataga's iPhone 7 was said to have been recovered. In the charge dated August 31st, Chidinma and Adedapo, listed as the first and second defendants, were named in counts 1 to 7, bordering on offenses of conspiracy, murder, and forgery. They were specifically alleged to have murdered Ataga by stabbing him several times on the neck and chest with a knife. The charge also specifically alleged that they procured false access and UBA bank account statements of the late Ataga. They also allegedly forged an international passport and a driver's license in Chidinma's name. Chidinma was named as the sole defendant in count 8 for committing the offense of stealing. She allegedly stole 2 iPhones, an iPhone 7 and an iPhone 11, 1 Apple MacBook laptop, and ATM cards of Access and GT Banks belonging to the late Usifo Ataga, from which the sum of 380,000 naira was subsequently withdrawn. In count 9, Chidinma's sister Chioma Egbuchu was charged with being in possession of the stolen iPhone 7. When all the counts were read to the defendants, they all pleaded not guilty. After arraignment, Justice Adesanya ordered the continued remand of Chidinma and Adedapo in custody, while the sister Chioma was allowed to continue on the bail earlier granted to her at the magistrate court. The judge has picked 8 trial dates spanning a 2-week period to allow for an accelerated hearing of the case. Shola Shoyeli, Channels Television News.
Third stories now. Ekiti State has held its maiden Economic Development and Investment Summit to showcase its economic potential. The Fountain Summit, as it's called, had in attendance Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the host Governor Kayode Fayemi, as well as his counterparts from Edo, Lagos and Kaduna. There were also political and business leaders in attendance.
The dependence of Ekiti State.
It's a gathering of political and business leaders, including the Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, as well as governors of Lagos, Edo, Kaduna, amongst other dignitaries, who have come to share their ideas and learn as Ekiti kicks off its Fountain Summit series to showcase investment opportunities in the state. The host governor and chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, highlights the state's effort to attract investors, calling for collaboration to drive growth.
Our solution to reduce the dependence of Ekiti State on federally distributed revenues is to enable private enterprise by making the state an attractive destination for investors. Our efforts have started to yield results, with the Kunderi farm, moribund for over 40 years, now operational and producing over 80,000 liters of milk per month.
The keynote speaker, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, challenged subnationals to start thinking like sovereign states by exploring areas of competitive advantage and robust investment in a knowledge-based economy.
There has to be a collective change of mind, a collective change of mindset, thinking differently. There is a need for a subnational to think like a sovereign state. You have a bigger GDP and even more revenues than many nations. And I think you are in the flow of progress with the planned establishment of the Technology Special Economic Zone. Clearly, the future of fast-growing economies is in the knowledge economy.
At a panel discussion, Governor Sanwo-Olu explains how Lagos has been able to sustain its economy. He also delves into the issue of state police, a point his colleagues from Edo, Kaduna and Ekiti all agree with.
One point that we should not drop eye on, which I'm sure everybody knows about, is issue around the state police, right? We've all talked about it. Mr. Vice President is here. He knows what each and every one of us feels, about this, and we should not let this opportunity slip by again.
Governor Sanwo-Olu has spoken the mind of governors collectively that we need multi-level policing arrangements.
We will not be able to run away from the fact that states will now have to play a much more role in the entire value chain for security.
My colleagues have articulated it correctly, yes. And the APC True Federalism Committee has made the case that we need multi-level policing, not just state police, even local government police.
The Vice President will not talk about the issue of state police at this forum, even though at previous fora, he agrees there's need for constitutional amendment to address the lapses in the Constitution, but he talks about economic viability of states.
So where a state has shown that it can perform in a particular sector, then we support that and give whatever we can to support it. And this is crucial because it also means that we'll generate more revenues for everyone to the pool.
As Nigeria gradually recovers from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, conversations of this nature are expected to translate into action plans that will increase the economic viability of the states.
NewsRound ends in the UK, where a Tory MP, Sir David Ames, has died after being stabbed at his constituency surgery in Essex. A 25-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder in what is described as a terror attack at a church in Leigh-on-Sea. Police forces have been asked to review security arrangements for MPs in the country with immediate effect.
At just after midday today, Essex Police were called to reports of a stabbing in Eastwood Road North, Leigh-on-Sea. The response of the emergency services to this incident was immediate, and our officers arrived on scene within minutes. When they arrived, they found Sir David Amess MP, who had suffered multiple injuries. This was a difficult incident, but our officers and paramedics from the East of England Ambulance Service worked extremely hard to save Sir David. Tragically, he died at the scene. A 25-year-old man was arrested immediately at the scene on suspicion of murder. He remains in custody. A knife was also recovered at the scene. The investigation is in its very early stages and is being led by officers from the Specialist Counter-Terrorism Command. We made it clear at the time of the incident that we did not believe there was any immediate further threat to anyone else in the area. It will be for investigators to determine whether or not this is a terrorist incident. But as always, they will keep an open mind.
And that's NewsRound this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shiboale. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.